This is a love story that happened in my last life, and this is the tale of how Love Lamput broke out of prison. I'm your host, and you're watching this channel. Love Lamput was the kind of guy who could get away with anything. In his day, he was a matinee idol, a handsome devil with thick, luscious locks, eyes like melted chocolate, and lips to die for. He was charming, witty, and smooth, able to talk his way into and out of anything. But if there was one thing Love couldn't resist, it was beautiful women. He loved nothing more than throwing grand romantic gestures, sweeping them off their feet and showering them with expensive gifts. All while completely neglecting his wife, my mother. My parents were an unlikely couple. My dad was a simple man, a hard-working blue-collar type who just wanted a simple life with a nice girl. But then he laid eyes on my mom and he was smitten. She was as beautiful as the sunrise, with skin like warm honey and hair like flowing gold. Dad was head over heels. But Mom, well, she was only interested in Love Lamput, a man twice her age with a reputation as a womanizer. But Love didn't care. He married Mom, and soon after she gave birth to me, a baby girl with eyes as dark as midnight and skin as black as ebony. Now, when Love looked at me, he didn't see his own flesh and blood staring back at him. Instead, he saw only my mother, only the woman he had stolen her away from. And so Love decided to send me away to boarding school. I was only 7 years old when I first set foot inside Miss Agatha's Academy for Young Ladies. It was a cold November day. The wind was howling outside, and I was bundled up in a thick coat as I stood on the steps waiting for someone to come and greet me. No one did. So I walked inside all by myself, and that's where I met Miss Agatha. Miss Agatha was a woman with eyes like burning embers and a mouth that could curdle milk. She looked me up and down, and then she spoke. "So you must be Ebony. Love sent me a file on you, I see. You're half black, half white. Interesting." She pinched my cheek and then she dragged me inside. "Come along now. Your father doesn't want to see you, so don't bother looking for him. Now let's get you checked in." The next few years were a blur. I excelled at academics and I took up fencing as my extracurricular activity. But every night when I lay in my bed, I would cry myself to sleep because no one ever came to visit me. Not one single person. And then one day everything changed. I was 11 years old when Love finally came to visit me. He swept through those doors like a man possessed, all smiles and charm. I rushed forward and threw my arms around his leg. "Daddy, you came to see me." He looked down at me with a mixture of surprise and disgust. "Well, of course I did, didn't I? How are we gonna have dinner together?" Then he turned to Miss Agatha. "Now let's go somewhere private and discuss the terms of my weekly visits." After they had left, I sat down on my bed and cried. Was I really just a pawn in my father's game? A trophy wife to be paraded around every now and then? Well, I wasn't gonna let that happen. So the next time Love came to visit, I put on my best dress and I waited for him in the parlor. When he arrived, I greeted him with a hug and a kiss on the cheek. Then I asked him, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, darling. What is it?" "Why aren't you married? Why did you leave Mommy?" Love looked at me for a moment and then he sighed. "Your mother and I are divorced." I never stopped loving her, but she wanted a normal life and I couldn't give that to her. So she went off with some boring businessman and he stayed here with me. "Oh," I said quietly. I already knew this, but I wanted to hear him say it. And from that day on, Love became a regular fixture in my life. He would come to visit me every Saturday morning and take me out for the day. We'd go shopping or to the movies or just stroll around the park. And I loved spending time with my dad. Sure, he was a bit of a player and he might have been a little too interested in me, but he was also fun-loving and kind. And I cherished every moment that we spent together. When I turned 18, I started attending university not far from the academy. Every weekend, Love would pick me up from campus and we'd drive back to the city. But as the weeks went by, I noticed that Love was starting to slow down. He was drinking more, partying less, and staying in bed more. One day I followed him to the hospital and I found out that he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. When Love returned home from the hospital, I went straight to his room and sat down on his bed. "Dad, how long do I have?" "Don't be silly, Ebony. You'll live a long and happy life, I'm sure." "No, I mean you." "How much time do you have left?" "Not much, I'm afraid." He reached out and stroked my hair. "But don't worry about me, sweetheart. I've made arrangements for you." "What do you mean?" "I've set up a trust fund for you. It should last you a lifetime." "I don't want your money." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't want to live off of your money. I want to make something of myself. I want to get a job and earn my own money." "That's a good girl." He smiled weakly. "I always knew you were special, Ebony." And then he passed away in front of me. It was the most traumatic experience of my life. I screamed for help, but no one came, and when they finally arrived, they pronounced him dead. Love Lamput was gone. In the following days, I threw myself into my studies. I graduated from university with honors and got a job working for a large corporation. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I had everything I thought I ever wanted, but I was still sad. And one night I confided in my best friend, a woman named Ella. "I miss my dad. I wish he was still alive." "I know what you mean," Ella said. Placing a comforting hand on my shoulder, "I lost my dad when I was just a little girl and I still miss him to this day." Then she did something unexpected. She pulled out a small box from her purse and handed it to me. "This was my dad's. He passed it down to me before he died. Now I pass it down to you." Inside the box was a key. And when I opened it, I saw that it was a skeleton key. "What does this open?" "It opens the door to your heart," Ella replied. "Never let anyone else hold the key." And then one day I met a man. His name was Thomas, and he was everything my father wasn't: stable, reliable, and loving. But there was something holding me back. I was in love with Thomas, yes, but I was also in love with the memory of my father. I knew I couldn't marry Thomas until I let go of Love Lamput. So I called up Miss Agatha and I asked her if I could come visit Love's grave. On the way to the cemetery, I stopped by my favorite bookstore and picked up a bouquet of his favorite flowers, lily and roses. When I arrived at the cemetery, I knelt down beside his grave and started to speak. "Hi Dad, I'm here to see you." I placed the flowers on his grave and then I started to talk about everything that had happened since he died. I told him about my graduation, my new job, and how much I missed him. And as I spoke, I felt a weight being lifted from my shoulders. It was as if a dam had broken inside me and all the grief I had been holding on to for so long was finally flowing out of me and into the grave. "I love you, Dad," I whispered. "Goodbye." From that day on, I was a different person. I married Thomas and we started a family. I had 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl. And although I never forgot about love, I was finally able to move on with my life. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any future uploads. Until next time, stay safe and take care.